heard many times that you can't be born LGBTQ plus because God doesn't make mistakes. Sure, God doesn't make mistakes except for the one time that he regretted making humans so much that he flooded the entire earth and drowned nearly all of them. Why would an omnipotent and omniscient God create something that he knew he would regret? And why would he choose to drown them instead of just snapping his fingers and deleting their existence? The claim that God doesn't make mistakes is nothing more than a tactic to make people fall in line and stop asking too many questions. If you think I'm wrong, call in because the show is starting now. Welcome, everybody. Today is May 25th, 2025. I'm your host, Dr. Ben, and today with me is Scott Dickie. What's going on, Scott?
Hey, Dr. Ben. I got to admit to you, I've been feeling a little frustrated today. It seems like in our world today, it's becoming more and more commonplace to and more okay to be treating other human beings as if they're less than human beings. And so other than that, yep. I'm doing pretty good. But it's hard to exist in the world today and be happy about it. How are you?
Right. Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. There's definitely a lot of like us versus them mentality going on right now in a lot of ways, a lot of kind of looking at people going through really, really tough times and not understanding why it's a problem. Right. It's things that, like, especially people in first world countries are often, complaining about very minor things, like minor inconveniences that are, destroying our entire lives. Meanwhile, those same people have no problem inflicting incredible violence on other people.
Right.
So that's just, it's inconsistent. And people really need to think about the reality of their actions and their words and how that impacts other people, even people that they've never met before.
Right. Yeah. We're definitely living in a hypocrisy these days, and that's hypocrisy spelled ACY, I think. And so yeah, I agree with you completely on that.
Yeah, and on that kind of downer note for an intro, we're here to talk about a lot of these issues. This is Talk Heathen. We're here to talk to you about religion, secular humanism, atheistic morality, cosmology, philosophy, science, all that jazz. And if you don't already know, Talk Heathen is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And this is a live show. We will be taking calls, so get those in at 512-991-9242, or you can use the internet at tiny.cc/callth. We have some open lines. Get your calls in at the beginning so we have enough time to talk to you. I already see some coming in, so you definitely don't want to miss out today. Any other kind of introductory words before we get on to our next segment, Scott?
I'm just looking, I'm really in the mood for some good conversation. And so I'm hoping we have, regardless of whether they're theist or atheist or whether they're friendly or antagonistic, I at least hope that we can have some good, productive conversations. I've been feeling lately that I really need some of that. And so, at least it helps me to make a connection to other people. And so I'm really hoping that we get some people that are really interested in not only expressing what's on their mind, but also wanting to talk about, our position and our perspective too. So I'm really crossing my fingers. I hope I see the calls coming in as well. And so I'm looking forward to some good conversation today.
Yeah, and that being said too, like, this isn't completely limited to religion. Of course, religious calls are, our priority, but we're also interested in other supernatural experiences that people may have had, like that bump in the night that you think might be a ghost, something like that. We're happy to talk with you about those things. We're happy to talk about other areas of skepticism too, like talking about science and math. I know we'd love to
Sure.
Talk about some
that'd be
math on the
awesome. That'd be
show.
awesome.
Yeah.
Every time I'm on, I cross my fingers. I've been disappointed thus far though, but today might be the day, right? Today might be the day.
Might be the day. And with that being said, let's bring up Kelly for this next segment. We're going to do our question
Kelly.
of the week. What you got for us?
Hey guys, how are you both? I almost forgot to unmute again. I almost pulled a Johnny Angel. It is time for our Talk Heathen to Me segment. And we got our question last week was, what excuse would Jesus give for being celibate? Wrong answers only. We got a bunch of good ones. So here's the top 3 answers, though.
All right.
Number 3 from Colin Matz. Jesus' excuse for being celibate is those unforeseen consequences to being the product of a virgin birth.
They had a point there. They have a point.
Yeah, that's really taxing my imagination because I can think of so many things. Number 2 from Chuck Gatos, and you know what? I read so many of Chuck Gatos's things. I feel like we're like close friends by now. So Jesus' excuse for being celibate, he's waiting for a girl who's as good as mom.
Oh no.
And Keith Moore, number 1, Jesus' reason for remaining celibate is because he's not worried about his first sexual experience as much as his second coming.
Okay,
wow.
All right.
I see what they did there.
Yeah, I do too. That was a punch to the gut there on that one, but it was still funny. It was funny.
It was a good one.
Yeah.
Now, the prompt for next week is name an inappropriate time and or place to suggest a prayer circle. Scott, you got a good answer for that one?
I don't know about a good answer. I have an answer, I think, because I have a problem with the question because as all real Christians, TM, know that the circle represents the letter O, which of course represents the Antichrist known as Obama. And so real Christians, TM, would not have a prayer circle. They would have some other kind of shape. And so, I think it's a trick question.
They would be in a cross shape, right?
That could be. That
right? Makes sense to me.
Right. Yeah.
What about you, Ben? You have an answer?
Yeah, my answer is during the orgy. Because, the last thing people at an orgy want is to be like, hey, can I pray for you?
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you bringing me up. Have fun. Have a great show.
All right. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. I love that segment. And yeah, get your answers in the comments below. We're going to pick our top 3 next week. So I'm very curious to see everybody's answers. And in addition to our lovely backup host, Kelly, we also have some other people hanging out backstage today doing a lot more work than we are doing on this show right now. So let's go to the crew cam and say hello to the beautiful faces there.
All right.
We have our lovely video and audio people, also the people who moderate the side chat, people that do the notes and stamps, and also our call screeners who make sure that everybody's ready to go on the air. We appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for all of your hard work.
For sure.
All right. Well, would you like to take this first call here with us?
Oh, we got Kelly still. Kelly's back.
Kelly's back.
Kelly,
again.
go to your corner. Go to your corner.
He just got very excited about our first caller today. So we have D in Iowa, returning caller. D, you are live on Talk Heathen. It sounds like you want to talk about like safety in your community, in your area. What specifically would you like to talk about?
Hi, Dr. Ben, Scott.
Hi, D.
Glad to be here with you guys today. So, yeah, my journey continues, and there are a couple of things that financially I can manage to do. A name change is one of them. A couple other things. But with all of the different acts and executive orders and things like that. You know, right now I don't feel safe.
Hmm.
I'm trying to grow an atheist and a supportive community in my area. And the people that I've connected with locally just seem very apathetic and unconcerned for the trans people in our state. Iowa has the governor has signed into law a bill stripping our protected class, trans, and I'm doing the work. I'm volunteering. Just doing all kinds of things, but I feel like I really right now I feel like I'm out there alone and not not safe to do what I feel like I need to do to be my whole self. And I'm just kind of feeling a little down about it right now. And I thought I would see if you guys had any suggestions or what your thoughts are.
I honestly wish I had better news for you, but I don't. And it's a thing that it absolutely sucks. And the fact is that it's not safe to be queer right now. It's just not. There are places that are better to be. There are certain states that are safe haven states and that have a less likely to kind of revoke those rights or continue to be oppressive. But unfortunately, most of us are in a situation where we're not safe to do those things, and it is going to get worse in a lot of those areas. And I don't mean to make everything more depressing, but that is reality. And the one thing I will say is, especially since I know that you're newer in coming out, there's a point where a little bit of detachment is kind of necessary almost. I have very strict boundaries with when I talk about queer issues, who I talk about them with, when I have that energy to engage in those conversations. And you can't burn yourself out. Even though it is an absolutely monumentally important thing to invest time in, don't do more than you can do without causing burnout, without causing compassion fatigue, because this will wear on you. And I remember from my own perspective, when I first came out and then even into, last year, I had this deeply felt sense of obligation that I needed to go out and do all these things. I needed to carry this weight by myself, even if people around me weren't. And what I learned from that is that I cannot do that on my own. And there's a point where you can do a little bit and people will join you or they won't. But if they don't, the answer isn't necessarily to hurt yourself in order to try to be the superhero in the situation. And it will feel like you're defeated in kind of a way. But you have to prioritize your own mental health at the end of the day. If safety kind of is your number one priority, this is where it gets very difficult to navigate, because on the one hand, I want everybody to be in a place where they are happy, healthy, and be able to live as themselves. The reality is you have to pick kind of one side or the other, depending on where you're at and how much you're going to invest and kind of what changes you want to see made. So And this is where boundaries like really come to play. Like you have your time and place for each of these. But if you are going to push the boundaries, if you are going to try to make social change, there is inherent risk in that. And I would love if there wasn't, but somebody has to be on the chopping block for that. And we are seeing a lot of people stand up and take that burden upon themselves. There's no obligation to do that, because that is your own idea of what you're willing to risk in order to see social change. And that is like, you're the only person that can decide how much you're going to invest of yourself into the issue. So while it is a moral good to proceed and to put yourself in those positions, you do not have to do that, because if you do, you could be that person on the chopping block. On the other side, you know, you can prioritize your own personal safety and move to a different city, move to a different state. Some people are choosing to go in the closet now. Some people are choosing to just remain under the radar. And like, that's a preference for those people as well. Like you're not going to make as much social change in that case, but you're also not going to be on the chopping block as easily in those cases. So you really have to think about this for yourself. And again, I wish there was a better answer than this, but there really isn't. It's what hell are you willing to tolerate right now? And yeah, I really wish I could tell you something that was less depressing, but that's where we're at currently.
And the only thing that I would add on to, I mean, I certainly can't speak to your experience, Dee, as much as Dr. Ben can. However, from an outsider's perspective, you know, there are some things that some things that are general that can be helpful too. For one thing, as Dr. Ben was saying, you want to be careful of burning yourself out, right? Because if it is true, I don't believe that you are truly alone there. Although if just because you can't see other people or there's nobody stepping up to support you directly in your efforts in your area, that doesn't mean that those people aren't there. And it doesn't mean that those people don't see you as their other person, you know, that they can relate to. And you know, if maybe they don't want to reach out to you for a variety of reasons. But just avoiding burnout is definitely important, because if you lose your motivation to be representative of your community and to try to make your a better world for your community, then you know, there might not be somebody in that area that would be willing to pick up the mantle. So I've told you this before. I think it's very admirable the way that you've approached your situation and your desire to make the world a better place. And, you know, I think that's very admirable, and it can be very challenging. The second piece of advice that I give you, and the only reason that I feel qualified to say something like this, is because as a teacher, there was a time when I went through some burnout as well. I felt like I couldn't be a teacher anymore. I felt like you know, I just wasn't getting any support from a variety of sources. And, you know, I just felt like I was in a no-win situation, but I just changed I quit my job and I took a different job. It was a different aspect. And ever since that moment, you know, it was just like a light switch, just the passion came back, the fulfillment came back. And so I guess what I'm saying is be patient. I know that that's kind of maybe the most empty thing that I could say to you, just hang in there. Right. And, but it can make a difference. You know, it could be just a matter of, it takes time for people to come to you and to help you to form that community. And it also takes time for you to be comfortable in that position as well. And so I think that, you know, I can almost guarantee that there are people out there that are saying, pardon my pun here, thank God for Dee, right? So I'm so happy Dee is out there. And so, you know, there has to be people out there that are thinking that. And so, and if any of those people are listening right now, let us know. If we'd be happy to pass on some messages to Dee if you're uncomfortable coming out or whatever. Anything that we can do to help you to build that community. We'd love to help you out. But I think it's a great thing that you're doing. I think that being from Minnesota, very close to Iowa, I can certainly understand your community and your situation a little bit, at least. And so, so I'm, to be honest, for one, I'm glad you're there, Dee.
Yeah, and Minnesota actually is a
you.
great place to be right now. If you have the ability to hop over there, because they're currently a safe haven for LGBTQ community. So something to consider. But yeah, even if you started a small community thing where you're at, because even if you don't find obviously LGBTQ organizations, which I challenge you to look for them because they might be there.
Right.
Theirs might be more concentrated in bigger cities and be a bit smaller of a group. But I try to look for something like that. And if you're not able to, at least have like a secular community where you're at, because there are quite a few people that just don't conglomerate with the LGBTQ groups and might just feel more comfortable being in a more open secular group. So try looking for any of those options, and hopefully you find something out there.
Thank you, you guys. I know that community building is not an overnight thing. I definitely understand that. Something as simple as changing my name, with the way the Republicans are passing all of these bills. What's the one now they want to pass that could potentially, your name is, if your current name is different than your birth name on your birth certificate, it's possible that it could disenfranchise you from voting. And I definitely have.
I know that one in particular did not pass. So I still there's a level of caution here too, because there are a lot of scary things happening, but there's also a lot of exaggeration about some things that are happening. So I would exercise some skepticism and some caution with some of that, because definitely there's a lot of clickbait going around as well. And again, not to detract from the bad things that are happening, but some of it is exaggerated. So,
and keep in mind too that very often it's a tried and true marketing technique to try to stir up emotions. And so having an emotional response to like a clickbait thing or something, or as Dr. Ben was saying, a legitimate story that's just been exaggerated, very often that, it's presented in a way that's intended to trigger some sort of emotional response. And so, and that, especially if you're in a situation where you're, dealing with anxiety and stress and difficulties from, several other angles, sometimes just putting that last straw on top of that camel's back can be, can just push you over the edge. And so, I would encourage you to try to be as self-aware as you can. I mean, I don't doubt for a moment the trouble that you're having and the difficulty emotionally dealing with your situation, but also you can by analyzing yourself and by turning that mirror onto yourself, that can help you deal with that, and that can help you sort through those things, and it can also help you to avoid those traps of emotional responses that Dr. Ben was talking about.
Sure. That. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. Dr. Ben, you've actually been more helpful than you think you were. And Scott, thank you.
And something I do want to mention, if you are looking for a friendly place to be, and this is for people out there as well, volunteering with the ACA, even virtually, can help you join another community. Of course, we have our ACD after shows and all that stuff, but if you want another tight-knit community, we are looking for volunteers. So
Absolutely.
Pretty cool group of people there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You guys, all of you have been a big support, and I appreciate all of you. And I'm going to go ahead and hop off and let somebody else have some time.
All right.
So thank you very
Well,
much.
if you decide you want to make the move to Minnesota, let me know, and I'll come down and I'll welcome you at the border with open arms.
Yeah.
Awesome, Scott. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dee.
All right. Well, we do have open lines, so please get your calls in. I heard that there's somebody who called in last week that we had told to come call back. So
yeah,
call in. Now is your time.
Last week we had some callers that were talking about the Kalam cosmological argument, and there was some good discussion there. We ended up having to continue it in the after. I wasn't on the show last week, but I was watching, and I did hop in during the after show, and we talked a little bit about it in the Discord after show, and we kind of ran out of time because we had to get ready for Atheist Experience, and so I encouraged this particular call. I won't call them out by name, but there was one person in particular there that I encouraged to call back because I would have been more than happy to continue the discussion on that. And so for those not familiar with the Kalam cosmological argument, it's basically it's a pretty simple argument that actually is logically valid. The argument goes, the first premise is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The second premise is that the universe began to exist. And then the conclusion is, of course, therefore the universe has a cause. And like I mentioned, that particular portion of it is logically valid, although the premises, I think, I don't think either of the premises are demonstrable. At least any physicist, I'm not a physicist myself, but I do work with physicists, and I've spoken to physicists before, some on our shows here. And anytime that I corner them and ask them, does physics say that the universe had a beginning? The answer is, well, not exactly. I mean, it's used as a kind of a way of talking about the early stages, quote unquote, early stages of the universe. But we all have heard phrases like the physics breaks down as we get closer and closer to that theoretical time zero and so on. And so, I think if we really look at it with that magnifying glass, we can see that particular premise is not demonstrable. Also, the other premise as well, that everything that begins to exist has a cause, that's also something that is not demonstrable as well. First of all, we don't know that a universe would have similar properties to objects contained within the universe. Very often that apologists that are using that particular argument that want to support that will try to shift the burden and say, well, can you show me something that wasn't caused? And, and that kind of thing. Like I said, that's a shifting of the burden of proof. It doesn't actually show that everything that ever came to exist did in fact have a cause. For example, we don't know whether or not something can come from nothing, because for the simple fact that we've never experienced nothingness. We don't know how nothingness behaves, quote unquote, even if it makes sense to even say that nothingness can behave a particular way. And so, so the second premise is also unsupported or undemonstrable, not demonstrable. Although very often they are granted for the sake of discussion, which is fine with me. At the end of the day, that particular argument still falls flat, even if we grant the premises, even if we grant the logical validity of the structure of the argument. It still falls well short of where people think that it goes. And I understand that professional apologists and philosophers like William Lane Craig, for example, do admit that they have to like stack on things on top of that. If we can show that the universe has a cause, then so now we have to show that that cause was supernatural. That's an extra step. Then we have to show that that supernatural cause was in fact a being. Then we have to go and show that that being was a godlike being. Then we have to show that that godlike being was, the God of the Bible, and so on and so forth. There's all these extra steps that are often kind of packaged in with that Kalam cosmological argument. I've been told specifically by Christians, if you believe in the Big Bang, then you must believe in God. And so by saying that, this argument doesn't get you the whole way, there are lots of people that think it does. And so I think it's important to point that out, in addition to failing on its own, as far as having the unsupported premises. You also then are still not really any closer, or maybe even one step closer on the voyage of 1,000 miles, right? It's that first steps. Okay, so there's one step out of the way. We still have those other steps that I think are really challenging. And so if that person that was, I've laid out my hand there, right? I've told you all of my criticisms of that argument right there. So if the person that was talking about that last week wants to call in, I'd be happy to listen to responses. Ben, what are your thoughts on what I said there?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. And one of my favorite kind of counter arguments to go to with the Kalam is just like you're mentioning, the fact that you have to prove that, like, even if we grant that there was a cause, you have to prove that the cause is the cause that you say it is. Because oftentimes, like, a lot of atheists don't believe that everything came from nothing. Like, that's not an assertion that I hear from the majority of atheists. In fact, like, most of us are probably likely to think of a natural cause instead of a supernatural cause. But so to say that atheists believe that something came from nothing or that there wasn't a cause is a straw man for the most part, because, like, I've never asserted that. I would probably, if I had to make a guess, is that there is some cause to the universe, but that it was more likely a natural cause and not a supernatural cause. And beyond that, I don't really know. I don't really know what the cause was. I don't know what all pieces were there at the beginning, if there was a beginning versus, infinite time and space. I don't really know any of that. But the arguments that they do put forward just don't line up with the argument that they actually think that they're trying to debunk. So but it is just wild, though, how human brains, and I'm sure you see this a lot, like being a teacher, just the urge for people to have shortcuts to everything. Like, and that's natural. We don't want to have to carry that cognitive load of everything that we do. And that's why, like, sure, in math class, it's good the first couple times to derive your own equation so that you understand how it works, how you got to these answers. But you're not going to rederive them every single time if you're going to do a physics problem. Like, you're going to use the one that was already established as the equation and just keep going with that because you already know how to do it. So there are good applications to having a shortcut. However, if you try to shortcut all of your reasoning for every new problem, you're going to run into a bunch of fallacies, because at that point you haven't done the thinking, you haven't done the legwork ahead of time. And so all of this stuff sounds very logical. Like, the Kalam sounds very logical if you don't think about what do you have to do to get from point A to B to C to D and so on. People love to go from A to Z without thinking of any of the in between. Right. And you can't do that, especially with something that is such a big claim, a big claim that's going to change how people interact with each other, change how people are going to be treated. It's not something that you can just shortcut and get away with.
Yeah. And it reminds me of, I read a book recently. First of all, I agree with you completely on the concept that people are lazy thinkers. I think humanity as a whole are lazy thinkers. And it's not necessarily not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we evolved this way, right? The whole idea of evolution is to be able to accomplish certain tasks and goals by using the minimum amount of resources and by taking the shortest path. And so it's not surprising at all that human beings are naturally lazy thinkers. And as a math teacher, especially, I think I see that all the time. Although I have a very close friend who's a philosophy instructor, and we talk at length about the trend. I want to say trend, but it's not really a trend. I mean, it's something that's been there all along. I mean, we've always been lazy thinkers, and until we evolve to become more critical thinkers, then that's going to remain that way, or at least until we can recognize the benefit of that type of deep thinking. And it brings two books to mind that I've read within the last year that really kind of helped me to focus my thinking on this idea of lazy thinking. And the first one is called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And I've actually read that book several times over the last many years. In fact, that's my favorite book to recommend, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He talks about how we have really two processes of thinking, and one of them is more based on emotion and heuristics, which are thinking shortcuts, and things like that. And then we've also have developed this aptitude for logical and rigorous thinking. And so, but that takes a little bit more time, a little bit more self-awareness. And this is a term that I learned a few years ago in one of my grad school classes, cognitive load. It takes extra cognitive load. It literally can tire you out to put effort into thinking. It's not a different world up there. It's still part of this world, and you can actually physically get tired. It's like you have a pile of money in front of you, and once you've spent it all, then you're just out, you're tapped out. And that's how it works. But the other book that I really like that really helped me focus my view is by an author by the name of Julia Galef, and her book was called The Scout Mindset. And in The Scout Mindset, she distinguishes between a scout mindset, which is more of a critical view of things that will take in all of the information, come to conclusions using that slow thinking, that type 2 thinking that Kahneman talks about, versus the soldier mindset, which is about protecting and about taking those shortcuts and getting your answer in, having an answer and supporting it. And so it really boils down to people thinking, can I believe that or must I believe that, right? The soldier mindset is looking for excuses to support what they already believe and looking for excuses to ignore challenges to that belief. And so I think that fits in. I mean, it fits perfectly well with the evolutionary model of human development. And it shouldn't be surprising at all. Although, if you think about it too much, it can put you in a mindset like, can we even overcome this? If it's programmed into our genetic makeup to be lazy thinkers, then it's going to take exceptional effort for us as individuals to overcome that, much less the amount of effort that it's going to take for societies to be able to overcome that. And I think we're seeing that in spades these days. I mean, we're seeing lazy thinking bubbling to the top, and all the dominoes are falling just perfectly for this particular situation, and that's what makes it so frustrating. It's all it would take is just a little bit of effort on everyone's part, and we could turn this ship around. So I don't know. It's tough to say.
Yeah, and like I love thinking about the dual processing model of thinking. It's something that applies pretty much across the board to any field, but I especially love using it to kind of describe the thought process of medicine, because you have the type 1 very rapid thinking that like is the reason why we have like a CPR algorithm. Like you're not going to take your sweet time deeply thinking about the next thing to do when you just need to go. You just need to resuscitate. So you have your algorithm for CPR. You have your algorithms for a bunch of different emergencies. So you can just pluck the shortcut out of your brain. Someone else did the thinking for you ahead of time with all of this research that goes into these algorithms. And so you can just go and do your thing. And then once they're stable, you can go into type 2 thinking and actually rely on your education and your experience to think of, where do we go from here?
Right.
But you do need to separate out those two sides. And there are advantages to both. But it is important, like, for people to recognize that, and especially since type 2 thinking relies on educational background, it relies on experience, it relies on a lot of things that people don't often have. And so how we can fall into pseudoscience a lot of the time is that people will rely on type 1 thinking for something that they are not equipped to do type 2 thinking for.
Right.
And they'll think that that's enough. And it's not. It's not enough. If you do not have that background knowledge, you cannot think appropriately about certain topics.
Right.
So,
and then the Dunning-Kruger comes in, the Dunning-Kruger effect comes in there as well, because even if you are ill-equipped to handle the deeper analysis, you might not realize that. You might think that you are doing a deeper analysis when really you're not. And so it seems like the deck is stacked against us. And but like I said, all it takes is effort. But giving effort is not something that humans are good at. Yeah,
for sure. That was a super great conversation. I hope we get our Kalam guy to call in.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Real quick, I'm going to give a couple announcements before we get into our next caller. So there are a few different ways that you can support the show. We've had a few super chats come in, and we'll probably read those either at the end of the show or after this call, but super excited to see those coming in. If you want us to read your super chat, send those in and we will read them out loud at the end of the show, as long as it is appropriate to be read on air. So just keep that in mind. Some other ways that you can support are by liking the video, hitting that subscribe button, making sure you are getting notifications. So hit the bell, make sure it's for all notifications, share out this video, leave comments, be in the side chat. All of those are great ways to help. There are also a bunch of meetups in the Austin area. If you happen to live near Austin, you can find out what's going on there at tiny.cc/ACA meetup. They have events such as Philosophy Under the Stars, game nights, and more. So definitely go check those out. In addition to that, there are weekly watch parties at the Free Thought Library on Sundays for live viewings of this show and the Atheist Experience every Sunday. Doors open at noon. And just like Dee was talking about needing more of a community, that's a great way to get some community as well. If you are in Austin or just visiting Austin, go stop by the library and you can watch our beautiful faces on the screen there. You can also follow Talk Heathen on TikTok and join us for pre-show lives on the ACA TikTok. The Atheist Community of Austin is how you can find that. All right, we have a theist in the queue.
All right.
Let's talk to Benji.
Let's bring him up.
Him from Alabama. It sounds like you want to talk about pronouns getting out of hand. What exactly does this mean, Benji?
Benji, can you hear us? I can't hear Benji.
I can't. Yeah, I can't either.
Okay, well, maybe we can put Benji back in the queue.
Yeah, I'm going to return Benji to the queue, and we'll see what your audio issue is. In the meantime, I think we will read some super chats.
Sounds good. While you're pulling those up, I just want to make a quick comment here about maybe as a preamble for when we get Benji calling in about. So the comment, the call screeners notes here said discussions on pronouns are, quote, getting out of hand. And I'd be curious, Benji, if and when we do get you on, please tell us what you mean by getting out of hand, because it sure seems like, I think that the communities that are involved in these discussions don't feel satisfied and don't feel seen. And so to me, it seems like there's more discussion to be had, or at the very least, more productive discussion to be had rather than unproductive discussion. For example, complaining about how things are getting out of hand. I think that's an unproductive discussion. But I'd be curious,
All right.
Benji, we'll when we get you in here, that's kind of what I'm going to be asking.
Sounds like Benji's ready.
Oh,
so
okay.
We'll bring him back on.
All right.
Benji, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right. Yep, I can hear you.
We can hear you now. Perfect. What is your topic today? What do you want to talk about?
Did we lose Benji again? It was just a teaser.
Maybe. All right. I'll return you back again, and hopefully we'll figure this out. I'm not sure what's going on your end. I don't know if Benji is using the web caller or it looks like maybe a phone. Not sure if there's just a bad connection there. But we do have some super chats that we can read. Scott, would you like to read any of these?
I'd be happy to. First, we have from Nero Mai, $10. Thank you, Nero Mai, for the $10. Nero says, my job brings me face to face with hundreds every day. What I've learned is most people seem to want the best for us, or at a minimum that we be left alone. And I'm in Tennessee. I don't know how much that helps. Was that in regards to the LGBTQ comments from D, or I'm not entirely sure there. I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's what I would think there. But sorry to hear that. I hope that, this community offers you some kind of relief, but I know it's a rough time right now for all of us.
We can keep going here. So Narcissa, I don't see any comments here. So it might have just been just a straight up donation of $49.99 for Narcissa from Narcissa. So thank you very much for that very generous donation there, Narcissa. And then Narcissa added in another one later. I don't know if this was another $49.99 or if this was intended to be with the first one. It says, this is exactly it, being taught the method of how to think. And as a teacher, I wholeheartedly agree. The whole art of learning math, and I use that word art intentionally, the whole art of learning math has to do with systematic thinking, about procedural thinking, about analytical thinking. And so that's a topic that is very dear to my heart. And I'm sure there's plenty of that in the medical industry as well. So being taught how to think, I think, is very, very important and often overlooked in today's education.
Oh, yeah.
And our last super chat here we had from Miranda Rensberger for $10, our frequent guest on our frequent contributor to our shows. Thank you for the $10. Says, my super chats could be so much more entertaining if you didn't insist on them being appropriate. Okay, well, maybe we can push the edge of the envelope today, Miranda. So try us out and see if you can figure out where that borderline is.
Yeah, I mean, we will tolerate probably most raunchy content. I mean, I talked about orgies earlier on in the show. I think it's more so something inappropriate would be we won't read anything that's racist, homophobic, anything blatantly discriminatory. I think that's more what we mean by inappropriate,
right?
Versus if you say naughty words, we're less concerned about that.
Yeah, I would imagine that anything that Miranda Rensberger would be willing to say would be appropriate for the show.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that too.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we lost Benji. I'm not sure if it was just a connection issue on that end. But hopefully, Benji, if you want to call back in, it'd be a great time to do so. We can have a little bit of a discussion here, and maybe Benji will watch back a little bit and call in with a response. But it's just the whole pronoun issue is, it's just such an interesting thing for people to be angry about. Like, you don't have people angry about calling people by their first name. Like,
Right.
if people get mad about the individuality of pronouns and like, oh, it's more than two different pronouns, which we have more than two in the English language. Like, we have used the singular they for hundreds of years. This isn't something new, but like asking people about their preferred pronouns is even like less of a hassle than remembering somebody's name, like somebody's individual name. Like, nobody gets mad. At least most reasonable people don't get mad if you tell them that your name is Bob and they go 10 minutes and then start calling you Chris or something. It's like, okay, actually, my name is Bob. My name isn't Chris. Like, most people will be apologetic and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot what your name was. I called you the wrong name. Like, that's normal in our society. But for some reason, you start bringing pronouns into this and people get so worked up. Like, it's less complicated than remembering somebody's name. And like, if you can respect somebody who changed their name after getting married, then you can respect somebody's pronouns. Like, if you have the cognitive ability to remember somebody's name, then you have the cognitive ability to remember somebody's pronouns. It seems like it's interesting. Like, and the people that seem so bothered by having to remember pronouns, it's like, are you really admitting that you can't remember something so simple as that? Like, is that what you're admitting now? I don't know.
Yeah, I think when you say it's interesting why people get upset, I think you're being very generous there, Dr. Ben. I mean, it's just freaking asinine is what it is. I mean, how tough is it to, does it really matter that much, the sound that you make out of your mouth when you're referring to a particular person? I mean, I don't get it at all. I don't get it at all. Yeah. And it's to me, it just boils down to somebody stamping their feet and I'm just not going to do this. And it's like a child, like a 2-year-old who's been put in the corner and is refusing to cooperate. It's just asinine. I think I'm being overly generous in my own wording as well when I say it's asinine out of respect for the format here and not wanting to get us in trouble with our with any censors. But I just don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, you've brought up issues. You brought up the example of when people get married, they change their name. Yeah, that happens all the time, and that's expected. Lately the meme going around about the Pope wanting people to call him Leo. It's the exact same thing. If you don't have a problem with that, why do you have a problem with something else? And I don't really hear any people even attempting to justify why they would have a problem with that. Oh, I just don't believe in it. Okay, expand on that, please.
And if people are religious too, like if I start calling your God she, her, like a lot of people would be offended by that, but I don't see anywhere that God demonstrates his anatomy. I don't see anywhere that we can like karyotype God and prove that he's XY and therefore a real man and not a woman. Like, right. I don't see, like, so much of this is metaphorical and abstract to begin with. Like the words that we use in our language is to communicate a concept. Like gender in itself is a concept that is very fluid and very dynamic in general. And like the fact that people will be so rigid in their idea of their deity meeting certain like criteria to be a man, but then those criteria are different for human people. Like, how does that line up? If we were made in the image of God and we as humans have very strict criteria for what makes us a real woman, then what is God? What gender is God? What pronouns are we going to use for God?
Right.
Like, and why are you going to get offended about it if there's no way to prove it? That might be an argument that I start using. Prove to me that your God is actually male. And
Yeah, whip it out, God.
Yeah.
we need a new gospel according to Mike Honcho, right? We need, God.
Yeah.
I want to see God. Let's see it, God. Whip it out. Show us that you are. And and to me, that example right there, that's just a perfect example. I mean, the God of the Bible presents himself in such a way that he's a male. He associates himself with characteristics that are traditionally described as being masculine characteristics, and being a father, being a son, and that kind of thing. Without any kind, there's no chromosomal evidence. There's no genitalia evidence. It really, literally is a social construct there, but yet they still can't make that connection that maybe it's a social construct for human beings as well. And if like Dr. Ben was saying, if we really are made in the image of God, okay, well, stick with that logic then. Don't change to another mode of logic when you're arguing with human beings. It's stick with your guns there. Right.
The arguments are all over the place, and kind of with that, I don't use the word inherently for a lot of things. Like, there aren't a lot of things that are inherently one thing or another. But biological essentialism is inherently incoherent. Like, that argument cannot be rescued. Mm-hmm. Oh no, I think Colin's studio crashed.
Yeah, that could be our issue.
That might have been the issue.
Yeah.
Oh, they're restarting it. Okay.
All right.
That's fine, because we're having a great conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you were calling, or if you were trying to call in, please keep trying, because we're going to get things back up and running here. We want to address the calls. But yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, Ben. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. Definitely get your calls in, because I do want to have these discussions. But yeah, biological essentialism is inherently incoherent, because you have to move those goalposts. If you are going to assign a strict binary of male or female to anybody, like, you have to accept that there's wiggle room to fit people into one of those two categories. And so it just, like, it doesn't hold up. You cannot make that argument. The only thing you can do is have the ability to accept some exceptions, which therefore means that, like, if you're going to hold to a gender binary, if there are only two genders, and it correlates with your sex assigned at birth, since there are people who do not fit 100% into either category, either exceptions exist and it's not a binary, or gender is flexible and can have a variation of criteria to meet that. And the only way you can tease that out is to go by what someone tells you. Right. Like, no matter what, you have to, however you move the goalpost, you're going to end up at gender being socially related, and gender identity being psychologically related, and them not having to be consistent with biology.
And that also is supported by the way that the terms are used in everyday language. I mean, when, the average human being meets, the numbers vary wildly, but at least in the tens of thousands of people during their lives. And if they say, let's just say, for example, that we meet, 5,000 men in our lifetime or something like that, you didn't see 5,000 genetic analyses. You didn't see 5,000 genitalia of these men. You came to the conclusion by the way that they presented themselves, by the way that they saw themselves fitting into society. That's how, when we make judgments about even the way that people are physically presenting themselves can impact that as well. We make those decisions not based on, if you ask somebody, how do you distinguish between a man and somebody who's not a man, they might talk about chromosomes. They might talk about secondary sexual characteristics. They might talk about genitalia or whatever. But when you meet somebody and you call them a man, you didn't interact with really of any of those. And so, put your money where your mouth is. If that's the way you're going to do it, then do it that way. Then, then my question becomes, how long after you meet somebody does it become polite to ask them to show you their genitalia. I'm guessing that, you're going to be making decisions about what you want to, about how they fit into how you view society long before you get to something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And call in studios back up. So lines are open. Get your calls in. Hopefully it'll be pretty easy to hear y'all now. So get your calls in, or you have to hear us keep talking at you.
So Benji either was a victim of just happenstance, or maybe Benji brought it down. That was part of his goal there. He's like, I'm taking down call in studio.
I think it was God. I think God was angry that I misgendered her. That
could be.
I misgendered her, and now she's angry.
Now she's up in heaven right now saying, yeah, fuck you, Dr. Ben.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's a comment in the side chat saying that even Jesus used pronouns. John 18:6, I am he. Yeah, he says that multiple times. Like, he has self-ID'd him as a man. There's really nothing else to it. Even God goes by self-ID. Therefore, we should go by self-ID. There, new argument.
There you go. Right, it's right there in the Bible. Then it must be true then, right?
Absolutely.
That must be, everything that Dr. Ben just said must be the case, because it was all biblically supported.
And we're getting some more super chats in. I know one just showed up, but here we've got one from Pibblepunk. $5. Work prevents me from catching other shows most weeks, but it's great to see you here, Dr. Ben. Thank you so much, Pibblepunk. And I'm sure you probably also appreciate Scott, but I appreciate that you like me more. I won't hold that against Scott for forever.
To be honest, Ben, I like you more too, so that's fair.
And then we have Byron B gave $10 saying, "Whip it out, God made me laugh root beer out my nose." Thank you so much. That's super chat.
Mission accomplished.
Maybe that should be some ACA merch at some point.
There we go. Right? Yeah, Talk Heathen mug with "Whip it out, God" on there.
God, I dare you. And then Miranda Rensberger gives us $10 and says, "I worked in an ICU for 17 years, Scott. I've probably seen 5,000 penises in my life. Had to censor because YouTube thought it was inappropriate. LOL." Yeah. So YouTube's threshold for inappropriate is less than ours. We do think it is okay to say penis on a live show.
Right.
But yeah, valid.
Incidentally, related to that, my name often is screened out, like on various platforms, and so I can't use my last name in many cases, and or even my YouTube handle, some kind of Dickie. I like to leave that in there. I like to leave it in there. I've put up with all of the crap from that name for all of these years. It's about time I get to use it to push back a little bit too. So I like to use that to push the edges of the censorship there.
Yeah, no problem. We do have some other announcements that we can get to.
Right.
Would you like to read the top 5 patrons of the week?
Surely. Let's do that. Okay, so the top 5 patrons. So these are donors from Patreon. And so our top 5 patrons for this week. Wait, am I supposed to read these in reverse order? Well, we'll just go from the top down. Number 1, Oops, all singularity, holding on to that top spot. Number 2, Dingleberry Jackson. Number 3, Kalevi Helvetti. Number 4 is Brian Zupke. Number 5 is J.A. Calton. And honorable mention this week, number 6 is J.P. Young. So thanks for the donations for all of you for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to have your name read on the air, then please consider supporting us at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. I'm curious as to, do you happen to know, Dr. Ben, how are those top 5 chosen? I'm just curious. Is that the most amount donated that week, or is it on an accumulative basis, or do you have any idea?
Yeah, I don't actually know the answer to that. That's a great question for the crew. Maybe one of them can chat that to us.
Maybe we can do a little bit of research in the background, and then at a future episode we can find out about that. Or maybe it's like a black box, right? They don't want us to know how the decision is made. I don't know. We'll do some investigative journalism here and find out about that.
Oh, they've confirmed it's by the amount of donations we get each week. So it does refresh every week.
Okay.
So if you want to get on that list, you just have to have the most for that week.
Yep. You can be number one. All you have to do is donate as much as oops, all singularity plus $1.
Yep. And then you'll make it on the list.
They should make that an option on Patreon. Oops, all singularity plus $1. Click on that and that's your donation.
Yes, that would be hilarious if they had a button like that where you could just, it's like ends up being like eBay. You just outbid the person.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's one way to do it.
I think we're coming up with a whole new paradigm here for online support for these kind of shows.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that being said, do we have any more super chats we did it. We had another super chat come in from Narcissa saying, I can't imagine having a life so mundane that objected to pronouns. Yeah, for real. Like if pronouns are your biggest concern right now, you're not paying attention because there's way bigger things to worry about other than, words that make your friends uncomfortable. Like it's really not worth it. I know there's a desire to just stick it to people and offend them. And people can accuse us sometimes of going out of our way to bother people. But this is different. I know we had a call a few weeks ago talking about punching up versus punching down, and people not quite understanding that making fun of a system above you or making fun of situations that are oppressing you is different than making fun of people who are being oppressed.
Right.
So it's like making fun of people who, need extra accommodations, like making fun of trans people, making fun of other queer people, making fun of people from different countries, etc. Like that's not okay because those people are the ones, considered at the bottom of the ladder.
Right.
Like it's not very kind to kick people who are like treated worse than you. It is okay. At least in our society, it is okay to punch up and to criticize systems that are being oppressors. So like criticizing like white supremacy, that is absolutely 100% okay. It's okay to make fun of people who think that, it's okay to be mean to others. Like that's different.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that discussion that you had, and you made a point to bring up context, and I think that really kind of triggered a thought stream for me too, and I think that really is important. There is the context of what you're saying and how you're saying. For example, if I do this, that's perfectly fine. I'm not hurting anybody. Nothing is happening there. But I'm sure we can imagine a scenario, a context where that would be very dangerous. If there was a pistol in my hand and there was a person standing in front of me, doing that is very dangerous and very callous and very, evil, you could even say. And so it's really all about context. It's not just a matter of what you say, and it's not even just a matter of how you say it, but what matters is you're in a context of people that are going to be listening to you and interpreting things that you say. For example, if we look at like a comedian like Ricky Gervais, the thing that I think that Ricky Gervais doesn't get, and he talks a lot about, it's not about, it's about the how does he say it? It's about the subject, not about the way the joke is presented or something along those lines. Ricky Gervais is of the mind that you can make a joke about anything. And I agree with that to some extent. However, that doesn't mean that in any context you should say a joke for the reason that, well, we don't, people that hear your joke don't necessarily understand your perspective or don't necessarily understand why you're telling a particular joke, which is exactly what somebody like Ricky Gervais complains about. He's saying that people don't understand my joke. Yeah, that's the point. People don't understand your joke, and so they misinterpret it, and so they might see it as a validation of their own bigotry. They might see it as an excuse to be callous in other contexts as well. And so you're not saying your joke in a vacuum. You're saying it in a context. When you do this kind of motion, for those of us that are audio only, I'm doing like a trigger pulling motion with my finger. If you do that in the wrong context, it can be dangerous. And so you need to be aware of the context that you're giving it. If you're on a stage in front of millions of people, then chances are, even if, I think that a joke like that can be made in without being offensive, but it's unlikely that it's going to be perceived that way with a general audience. I mean, you have to know the person, you have to understand what they intend to mean, what they're trying to say. Another example like that would be Sam Harris when he talks about racial profiling. He might come up with statistics that say, well, statistics show that this particular profile is more likely to do a terroristic act, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, but you're bringing that up there's a context of bringing that up. If you say that without qualification and without being aware of your context and who you're talking to and other, environmental characteristics of the way you're delivering what you're saying, it can be misunderstood. As Sam Harris freely admits, people misunderstand what he's saying, but they can misunderstand it in the negative way too. And that's kind of the point. Is that people don't necessarily, even if you intend it to be a purely objective observation, or even if you intend it to mean something else or to encourage more investigation or more knowledge or more compassion or whatever, it's not necessarily going to be brought that way. There's going to be people that are using that to justify their bigotry. And as I was just saying that, it reminded me before the show, Kelly showed us this book that he has about biblical support of slavery. And it's like this big, thick book. And that's another example of that kind of thing. If you say that the Bible can be misrepresented to support slavery, I think you're wrong about that. But even if you say that, you have to understand that language can be dangerous even when not intended to be that way. And we're talking about populations of people that are vulnerable, that are being set aside, that are being pushed aside and being called other and being called inhuman and being called less than human. And so promoting that kind of discourse, that carefree, unapologetic discourse, can be dangerous. And if you continue saying those kind of things, even knowing that happens, then that is a moral failing right there in my eyes. I don't know, Ben, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And it's, there's a lot that goes into this discussion for sure. And I encourage people to actually go out and listen to trans comedians, listen to gay comedians, listen to a variety of perspectives in comedy, because there are appropriate ways to make jokes about those communities. But it's the difference is if the joke is the fact that they are part of that community and are treated as subhuman, that's
right.
a problem.
Yeah.
It's not funny that I'm a trans person. That's just normal. And if you think that my existence is a joke, that's a problem. There are plenty of ways to make jokes of common experiences within the trans community. There's so many trans comedians that do that all the time. It's the difference. Like I was saying, you're not making fun of their identity. You're making fun of something that is a shared experience among those people in that community. And that's funny. And so learning how to interact with those communities kind of allows you to make more of those jokes, because you know what's appropriate and what isn't. What's going to be received well in those communities. But if you're not sure, just don't tell the joke.
Right.
That's probably the best way to approach it. If you don't know what's appropriate in that setting, don't tell the joke. It's okay to listen to other people who are in that community and laugh at when they tell the joke. Go listen to them tell it. But there are plenty of trans comedians that are absolutely hilarious. And you just gotta
Yeah,
Like, do
because
a
the
quick
context
YouTube
is
search,
different
you'll
then.
find it.
In those cases, the
Exactly.
context is different, and
Exactly.
you can assume that in a particular intent is intended, and so it's a different situation, and it's unfortunately that's we can't read each other's minds, and so we have to rely on communication and the context of that communication, and that's an imperfect medium, and so. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Ben. Of course, you said it much better than I could. Maybe that's why I like you so much more than myself. But if you're unaware of that, just don't. It's safer just to avoid that if you're not sure.
Yeah, definitely. We do have an interesting voicemail that we can listen to. I was actually just thinking about it because we were talking about the kalam, and we were talking about things coming from nothing. But we have an interesting voicemail from a Christian that kind of fits in with our earlier topic.
Okay.
I'm Christian. I believe, God created in his image, male and female. And by the way, no single cell organism has ever merged with another single cell organism to create a multi-cell organism. And how is this earth made? How is our atmosphere made? You say a big bang, but a big bang destroys it.
Oof.
It destroys things. It doesn't create.
Boy, that's a mishmash. That's literally a word salad right there. Boy,
it's like it kind of hit on a lot of things that we were talking about today, so I thought it would be perfect to address that.
So I can answer a few of those. And how was this Earth made? I mean, how specific do you want to get? I don't know how the matter came into existence, other than coalesce, condensing, high energy. Or high level energy. We have accretion, the planetary accretion process. There's all kinds of things. I'm not entirely sure that's what he means though when he asks how was this Earth made? How was our atmosphere made? Same kind of process. It's just gravity and motion. That kind of thing. You say Big Bang. Big Bang has nothing to do with how the Earth was made. Sorry.
Right. It's a extreme misunderstanding of what the Big Bang is. It's similar to the misunderstandings of what evolution is. We don't believe that the Big Bang happened and then suddenly everything existed in the way that we know it today. That didn't happen. It's like you have energy and other things that would end up coming together and be in the right place at the right time to have other reactions take place and to have this kind of snowball effect. But we don't think that everything just came into existence the exact way that we know it. That didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the voicemail really highlights a level of ignorance there. And it's worse than just ignorance. It's ignorance that is not known, right? We talk about things that that known knowns. How did that go? There's unknowns that you know about, that you don't know. But then there's unknowns that you don't even realize that you don't know. And so in this case, I think that's what we're talking about there. He learned the words and thinks he understands it. I think, if even a basic understanding of each of those terms would answer most of his questions right there.
Yeah. And the statement, and by the way, no single-celled organism has ever merged with another single-celled organism to create a multicellular organism is absolutely false, because we even have our most widely accepted hypothesis that the mitochondria started off as kind of a symbiotic relationship between a bacterium and a single-celled organism, and they work together to fulfill needs of each other. And that's probably how a lot of multicellularity started happening. You had single cells that ended up living within a community and filling needs for each other. And through those symbiotic relationships, you get bigger communities, you get more distinct roles taking place in that. We see this throughout nature. This isn't unique to, humans being multicellular. Obviously, there's so many organisms that do this same thing in very, very different ways that we can trace back through phylogeny. Like, that's why the whole tree exists. We have all these branches that come off of common ancestors, but they work similarly, but very, very differently in other cases. So
yeah. So in this case, not only is he missing the deeper point, but even at a superficial level, he's just way off.
Yeah. And it just starts off with, a Bible quote. And it's funny that like he wasn't even going to talk about gender, but ends up bringing in the quote, "I believe, God created in his image, male and female." Like, okay, but you're talking about the earth and the atmosphere and like multicellular organisms and stuff. Like, where I find that a lot of people, if they're going to quote scripture, they only know like a handful of verses. And so they think of something that sounds like part of a verse that they're going to say, and then they just drop that, but don't recognize that that verse doesn't make any sense with the rest of what they're saying. It just happened to be the verse that they knew. Like, I would love for people to recognize the rest of their Bible and not just like the 5 verses that they know.
Right. Yeah. However, as somebody who frequently can be distracted and going off on tangents and that kind of thing, I can sympathize a little bit with this, the structure of this voicemail here. I know that my brain can kind of bounce around from topic to topic, especially if I'm a little bit nervous calling in to, to talk to some experts or something. And so, I'll cut him a little slack there too. But I think the solution to that call is education. I think that it all boils down to just learn some stuff about the world and then get back to us. Yeah,
for sure. And definitely call into the show next time. You don't have to leave a voicemail. You can call us directly and we can have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
I'd love to do it.
Yep. You might even say we could talk some heathen.
We could talk some heathen with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And with that, let's bring Kelly back up. I know he wants to talk some heathen with us as well.
Hey, what's up, guys? I was listening to that voicemail, and it's obviously, judging by the voice, it's obviously somebody my age. And I've been thinking, I was watching a lot of Outer Limits this weekend, that old classic TV show.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things I noticed, and it kind of clicked in my head, that it was pretty prevalent throughout the 60s, that when they showed scientists on TVs and on movies, they were always these elite people, that they were like unapproachable by normal human beings, right? And I think that might be one of the reasons. It just clicked in my head this weekend. And of course, I've been wrong about so many things so many times that I could be wrong about this, but it kind of clicked in my head that maybe that might be one of the reasons that so many people in my generation distrust science, because they were kind of like conditioned by the media to think of scientists as the others. Mm-hmm. So, and I want to give kudos to both of you guys, because we did have the problem with Colin's studio. And I'll tell you, I don't think I could have talked that long without grabbing some kind of prop. So kudos to you guys. You were both great.
Yeah, I mean, we had some good conversations today. I appreciate you all sticking with us. And I do want to mention, or even Scott had wanted to bring something up about Black Non-Believers is doing an event today.
They're doing their
go check it out.
They're doing their spring fundraiser, and it's happening as we speak, as we're recording this right now. So that might be a good place for people to go to after, between your time between Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience. Maybe hop on over to the Black Non-Believers fundraiser. I'm not exactly sure of the link, but if you go to YouTube and just do a YouTube search for Black Non-Believers, I'm sure you can find the link there. They're having our good friend Cynthia McDonald and Mandisa Thomas are hosting that show, and they have lots of interesting guests. And so if you're so inclined, pay them a visit and maybe give them a few bucks and help them with their mission. And I think that's going on until 5 Eastern time today, or 6 Eastern, 5 Central time today.
Awesome. Definitely go check that out. And we're going to wrap up our
I was just going to say,
here.
Don't forget the prompt for next week. Name
Oh,
an
right.
inappropriate time or place to suggest a prayer circle. So in the comments, not the side chat, but in the comments below, and we'll read out the top 3 next week.
Yep. And
We
have a
got
couple.
2 last super chats
Yeah.
here. Let's not forget those.
Yep. We have one from Cyrilay, gives $5 saying, I use goddess for gender neutral, since using the masculine god as neutral was just as arbitrary of a decision. Love y'all and the work you do. Yes,
Fair enough.
absolutely. Misgender god. It's great. Use whatever pronouns you want. They're all made up anyway. And another one from Miranda Rensberger gives $10 saying, I can quote partial Bible verses too. Revelation 22:12. Behold, I come quickly. It's only half the verse, but it's still highly quotable. Yep.
That's true.
There you go.
And we did encourage Miranda Rensberger to push the envelope on the appropriateness of the comments. And so I think that was very, very appropriate for the context of this discussion.
Yes, absolutely. And we will be hanging out in the Discord for a little bit afterwards. So come hang out with us in ACD. And I'm going to throw out some love rings.
Turn the tie on.
If you aren't yet in the ACD, you can go to tiny.cc/ACD Discord to get that link. Anyone have any wise words for the love rings today?
I think we all need a few love rings these days. And so these love rings are going out to everybody who needs it.
I think we all need more than a few.
Yeah. And I like how they're coming straight off of Kelly's tie
I
there.
just turned the tie on. Yeah.
They are. It's the love ring tie. It's just the magical love ring tie.
Yeah.
It's the same color too. It's great.
Yeah. I switched during the show just so I could do this.
I shouldn't call it a love tie, though, because in a different context, that could mean something very different.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, love rings to everybody out there in the audience. If you don't believe, this is your community. We appreciate all of you. And thank you so much, Dee, for being a supporter and for calling in. I hope you're able to find a community soon and join us in the ACD. Join us everywhere that we have events going on. If you are looking for those communities. And if you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced.
We want the truth. So watch Truth Wanted live, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Call 512-991-9242 or visit tiny.cc/call TW.